The Shadow Immigration Minister, Dan Tehan. Now, big news out of Israel in the last few hours. Do you welcome that development, Dan Tehan?
Yes, this is welcome. The freeing of hostages is something that Israel has been seeking. It is concerning that it's taken this amount of time for us to get here. The best way that this conflict could end is if Hamas releases all the hostages that they're holding, all those Israeli hostages. But this is a step in the right direction, and hopefully we will see Hamas now release all the Israeli hostages.
We've seen reports today on the ABC, 860 visas have been granted to those with Palestinian connections. These are visas to Palestinians with connections to Australia. What's your response to that? Do you know anything about this cohort that have received visas? And what's your assessment of the security situation in response to those visas that have been granted?
Well, this is the first we've heard of this, Kieran, and once again we need proper transparency from the Albanese government. We keep hearing things via the media, especially when it comes to immigration matters, rather than the government being upfront with the Australian people. So it would be very good if we understood what visas are being granted and what security checks are being undertaken as part of the granting of these visas. So once again, Claire O'Neill and Andrew Giles need to come clean and let the Australian people know exactly what they're doing and how they're going about it, because we keep on just hearing about these things via the media with none of the details, and important details like have they gone through the relevant security checks.
Australians or Australian visa holders seeking to bring family members out of that well, it would be a hell right now in the face of the conflict. It makes sense that they would want to get them out, but are you concerned about potential links to, among some of that cohort that have been brought here, that they haven't had appropriate security assessments? Is that your concern?
Well, we don't know that, and that's why the government needs to come out, be transparent and let us know what processes have been undertaken, on what basis have the visas been granted, and whether the proper security checks have been undertaken. That would be the type of information that the Australian people would rightly expect from a government. But once again, all we're learning is via the media, and we need transparency, and especially transparency around whether all the proper processes were undertaken, especially the proper security checks.
And if they have been, and again, you're saying that there needs to be transparency and explanation as to what's gone on here, but if they have been, do you think that that then is an appropriate humanitarian response?
Well, it would be good if the government came out and explained what it's doing, why it's doing it, and the rationale for what it's doing. This is the first we've heard about it. Was 10, 15 minutes ago when this news report appeared. It's not the way that you reassure the Australian people about how you're running your immigration system. The best thing is to be upfront and be transparent, like we were, for instance, when we were in government, when it came to the granting of visas for Afghanis with the fall of Kabul and then the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban. Being upfront and transparent is the best way to reassure the Australian people about what you're doing. The problem with this government is, especially when it comes to immigration, it seems to be that we learn more and more out of the media than we do from the government itself.
The Minister has confirmed the government's looking at preventative detention orders as recommended by the opposition. Would you hope to see that move as early as next week, or does the government need to await the final reasons of that High Court decision recently?
Well, we've said all along that the government should have sought legal advice of this type in June or in the lead up to the High Court decision. It said, clearly it didn't. Now it's saying that it is seeking that legal advice. Well, what we would like to see is that legal advice as soon as we possibly can, and then we've said we're happy to work with the government to make sure we can put these hardened criminals back into detention. Now, this is incredibly important now when we find out by the Western Australian newspaper, and it seems confirmed by the Western Australian Chief Police Commissioner, that there are 4 child sex offenders who were released who still are not wearing ankle bracelets. And we do not know
police
how many
commissioner,
more of
so
them.
the commissioner, according to that report, says he doesn't have the authority to do that, to place that GPS tracking on those individuals. How on earth would that be the case?
Well, this is why Claire O'Neill needs to be able to provide answers. And when she was asked about this, all she said was that you need to speak to the Immigration Minister, Andrew Giles. Now, they both work in the Home Affairs portfolio together. They should be undertaking this work together. Yet what we have is Claire O'Neill seemingly throwing Andrew Giles under a bus when it comes to this issue. The more we find out about their handling of this issue, the more deeply, deeply disturbing it is. Remembering that in Western Australia at the moment, you now have 4 child sex offenders free in the community without ankle bracelets on. And we do not know whether this is occurring in other states and territories across the nation as well. Claire O'Neill has refused to answer those questions, and we haven't heard from Andrew Giles. So once again, the Australian community is left completely in the dark and deeply, deeply concerned.
Shadow Immigration Minister Dan Tehan, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kieran.